Welcome to this free audiobook presentation of Wasdale, Camp Michael's Scares and Frights Halloween Night. Written by Jerry M. Thorpe. Narrated by Lupe Lilly. Produced by Published YA Broadcasting, 2026. Now, dim the lights, gather around the campfire, and prepare to enter Camp Michael's, where on Halloween night, some movies come frighteningly to life. The wind rustled through the tall pine trees surrounding Camp Michael's, carrying with it the crisp smell of autumn leaves and wood smoke. October was nearly over. Only 3 nights remained until Halloween. All around the camp, preparations were underway. Orange pumpkins lined the cabin porches, strings of glowing lanterns hung from tree to tree, and hand-painted signs read, "Countdown to Halloween." The campers loved this time of year because everyone knew one thing. Nobody celebrated Halloween like Camp Michael's. Every year on Halloween night, the camp held its famous Scares and Frights Festival, a night of costumes, candy, campfires, and an outdoor monster movie, Trevor the Stars. But there was something else about Camp Michael's. Something older. Something whispered. Something that made even the bravest campers pull their blankets a little tighter after dark. A legend. The legend began with the oldest building in camp. A small wooden shack at the edge of the woods. Its windows were boarded shut. Its roof sagged with age. And hanging crookedly above the door was a faded sign that simply read, "Movie Shack." No one went near it. No one. At least, not after sunset. "Why is it boarded up?" asked Tommy Jenkins as he stared through the dining hall window. "It's creepy," said Sarah, shivering. "It looks haunted." Across the table, 12-year-old Jacob Carter grinned. "Maybe it is." Sarah rolled her eyes. "You don't believe in ghosts." Jacob leaned closer. "No, but I believe in legends." That got everyone's attention. Even the noisy dining hall seemed to grow quieter. "What legend?" asked Emma. Jacob looked toward the dark forest outside, then lowered his voice. "They say the movie shack used to be the first theater at Camp Michael's." "So?" Tommy asked. "So, one Halloween, a projectionist disappeared." Everyone froze. He vanished during the final movie of the season. Just gone. Sarah swallowed. "What happened to him?" "No one knows." A log in the fireplace popped loudly. Jacob continued. "They say every Halloween, if you stand outside the shack and listen carefully." He paused. "You can still hear the projector running." Nobody said a word. Finally, Emma laughed nervously. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Jacob asked. At that very moment. Click. The lights in the dining hall flickered. Everyone jumped. Click. They flickered again. Then, they went out. Darkness swallowed the room. A few campers screamed. Outside, somewhere deep in the woods, a strange sound echoed through the trees. Chick, chick, whir. The unmistakable sound of an old movie projector. The lights came back on. Everyone looked at one another. Nobody spoke. Jacob's smile had completely disappeared. Because he had heard it too. Chick, chick, whir. Far beyond the cabins. Far beyond the campfire circle. Something had just come to life inside the old movie shack. With Halloween night drawing closer, the legend of Camp Michael's was about to become real. The next morning, the strange sound from the woods was all anyone could talk about. By breakfast, the story had spread through every cabin at Camp Michael's. Some campers swore they had heard an old movie projector. Others said it was only the wind. A few claimed they had seen a light shining from the direction of the old movie shack. The counselors laughed it off. "Probably a raccoon," Counselor Trevor said, pouring himself another cup of coffee. "A raccoon with a projector?" Jacob asked. Trevor grinned. "You'd be surprised what lives in these woods." The campers laughed, but Jacob didn't. Neither did Emma, because both of them knew exactly what they had heard. Chick, whir. An old movie projector. By noon, the camp was buzzing with excitement. Tomorrow would be Halloween Eve. And then, Halloween night, the biggest celebration of the year. Colorful banners hung between the trees. Pumpkins sat on every porch. Counselors carried boxes filled with decorations. Someone had even dressed the camp's wooden bear statue as a vampire. Everywhere Jacob looked, it seemed impossible that anything scary could happen here. And yet, he couldn't stop thinking about the movie shack. Jacob. He turned. Emma and Tommy were running toward him. "You'll never believe this," Tommy said. "What?" The camp director made an announcement. Emma smiled. "They're bringing back Monster Movie Night." Jacob's eyes widened. No way. Every Halloween, Camp Michael's held an outdoor movie under the stars. But it hadn't happened for years because the old projector had broken. Now it was returning. "Tonight?" Jacob asked. "Nope," Tommy said. "Halloween night, right before the costume parade." Jacob's stomach twisted. Halloween night. The same night everyone said strange things happened around the old movie shack. The same night the projector sound had returned. A cold breeze swept through the trees. Emma noticed. "You okay?" Jacob nodded. "Yeah, I guess." But he wasn't. Not even close. That evening, the camp gathered around the main fire pit. Counselor Trevor stood beside a large wooden crate. Inside sat an old-fashioned movie projector. Its metal body was scratched and dusty. The reels looked ancient. Trevor smiled. "Everyone, meet the newest member of Camp Michael's." The campers cheered. "We found this beauty in storage this morning. It still works." The cheering grew louder. "On Halloween night, we're showing classic monster movies just like the camp used to do years ago." Jacob's heart skipped a beat. Storage. The projector had come from storage. Near the movie shack. Trevor lifted one of the film reels. "These movies are older than I am. Some are over 50 years old." Tommy grinned. "Awesome." Trevor laughed. "Who likes monsters?" Every hand shot into the air. "Who likes being scared?" Even more hands went up. "Then this Halloween is going to be one you'll never forget." The campers cheered again. Then, whir. The projector suddenly turned on by itself. Everyone jumped. The reels slowly began to spin. Had touched it. The machine had no power cord plugged in. The fire crackled. The woods fell silent. Whir, click, click. The projector stopped. Counselor Trevor blinked. "Well, that's strange." Some campers laughed nervously. Others didn't laugh at all. Jacob stared at the machine. He had heard that sound before. Last night. In the woods. Emma stepped beside him. "You heard it too, didn't you?" Jacob slowly nodded. The projector sat perfectly still. Then, a single strip of old film slipped from one of the reels. It drifted to the ground. Jacob picked it up. The tiny pictures on the film made his blood run cold. A monster with sharp teeth. A creature rising from dark water. A wolf standing trevoreth a full moon. The film felt strangely warm in his hand. Then a gust of wind swept through the campfire circle. The projector's lens suddenly flashed. For just a split second, an image appeared on the side of a nearby cabin. 2 glowing eyes. Watching. Blink. The image vanished. Nobody else seemed to notice. But Jacob did. So did Emma. Far beyond the campfire. Deep inside the dark woods. Something moved. Halloween night was only 2 days away. The monsters were waiting for their movie to begin. The next morning, Camp Michael's woke to the smell of pancakes and bacon. The strange projector incident from the night before was already the biggest topic in camp. It turned on by itself. No, it didn't. I saw the reel spinning. You were eating marshmallows. You didn't see anything. The dining hall buzzed with excitement. At the front of the room stood the camp leader himself, Mr. Harold Grimsby. The campers loved him. The counselors tolerated him. Everyone agreed on one thing. His jokes were terrible. Mr. Grimsby adjusted his ranger hat and smiled. Good morning, campers. Who's excited that Halloween night is almost here? The room erupted in cheers. And who wants extra chores? Silence. A cricket chirped somewhere outside. Mr. Grimsby grinned. Tough crowd. Several campers groaned. That's okay. By Halloween night you'll all be laughing. No, we won't, Tommy shouted. The room burst into laughter. Even Mr. Grimsby chuckled. Fair enough. Just then, the dining hall doors swung open. In walked the camp's maintenance man, Mr. Calder. Mr. Calder was tall, wore old work boots, and carried a toolbox everywhere he went. Nobody had ever seen him without it. He could fix anything. Cabins, bicycles, broken canoes, even the camp clock that had stopped for 20 years. There was one thing Mr. Calder didn't like. The old movie shack. In fact, he hated it. He set his toolbox on the floor. Morning. Morning, Mr. Calder, everyone replied. Mr. Grimsby smiled. Any chance you've got that old projector cleaned up? Mr. Calder's face suddenly changed. You found that thing? Sure did. We're using it for monster movie night. Mr. Calder looked like he had swallowed a lemon. I wouldn't do that. The room grew quiet. Mr. Grimsby laughed. Why not? Afraid of old movies? No. Mr. Calder folded his arms. I'm afraid of where you found it. Jacob and Emma exchanged glances. The movie shack. Mr. Grimsby smiled. Oh, come on, Mr. Calder. Not the old ghost story again. It isn't a ghost story. Mr. Calder's voice was serious. I told you years ago that building should have stayed locked. A few campers leaned forward. Tommy's eyes widened. Now this was interesting. Mr. Grimsby tried to lighten the mood. What? You think the projector's haunted? Mr. Calder didn't answer. Instead, he looked out the window toward the woods. Then he said quietly, some things are better left forgotten. Even Mr. Grimsby didn't have a joke for that. Finally, he cleared his throat. Well, pancakes, everyone. The room slowly returned to normal. But Jacob couldn't stop staring at Mr. Calder, because the maintenance man looked genuinely worried. After breakfast, Jacob, Emma, and Tommy found Mr. Calder repairing a porch railing outside Cabin 3. Mister? Jacob asked. Mr. Calder looked up. What can I do for you? We heard what you said at breakfast. Mr. Calder returned to his work. I say a lot of things. You know something about the movie shack, don't you? Emma asked. Mr. Calder stopped hammering. The woods suddenly seemed very quiet. After a long moment, he sighed. When I first came to Camp Michael's, that old building was still being used. For movies? Tommy asked. Mr. Calder nodded. Every Halloween. What happened? Jacob asked. Mr. Calder looked around to make sure nobody else was listening. Then he lowered his voice. There was an accident. The three friends leaned closer. A long time ago, one of the projectionists brought something strange to camp. What kind of something? Emma asked. Mr. Calder shook his head. Nobody knows. He opened his toolbox. From the bottom, he carefully removed an old photograph. It showed several counselors standing in front of the movie shack. But something else was sitting beside them. A large metal canister. The label was faded. You could barely read it. But two words stood out. Active. Ooze. Jacob's heart raced. What's in it? Mr. Calder's face turned pale. That's exactly what nobody ever found out. A cold breeze swept through the camp. The photograph trembled in Mr. Calder's hand. The night before Halloween, he continued, the canister disappeared. Disappeared, Tommy whispered. Mr. Calder nodded. So did the projectionist. The three friends stared at him. After that, the movie shack was closed forever. Then, a strange sound echoed from somewhere deep in the woods. Whir, click, click. The sound of an old movie projector. Mr. Calder's eyes widened. No. He quickly put the photograph away. What is it? Jacob asked. But Mr. Calder was already standing. Stay away from the movie shack. Mister. I mean it. He grabbed his toolbox. If anyone asks, you never saw that picture. Then he hurried away. The three friends stood in silence. Tommy swallowed. Okay, that was creepy. Jacob looked toward the dark trees. Something glinted between them. Metal. Round. Half buried Trevor, a pile of leaves. He slowly walked over. There, lying in the dirt, was an old canister. Its rusted label read, Psychoactive Ooze. A drop of glowing green liquid slid down its side. And, somewhere in the woods, the projector started running again. The rusty canister sat half-buried, Trevor the leaves. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. A thick drop of glowing green slime slid down the side of the metal container and splashed onto the ground. Plop. Tommy took a step backward. Nope. I don't like that. Jacob knelt beside the canister. The faded label was almost impossible to read, but the words were clear enough. Psychoactive Ooze. Emma looked around nervously. Maybe we should get Mr. Grimsby. Or the police, Tommy added. Or the army. Jacob ignored them. There was something strange about the canister. It was old and rusty, but the ooze looked fresh, almost alive. Then, the lid made a tiny sound. Tick. The three of them jumped. Did it just move? Tommy whispered. Another drop of green ooze dripped onto the ground. Suddenly, a voice called from behind them. What are you three doing out here? They spun around. It was Mr. Grimsby. The camp leader was carrying a box of plastic pumpkins and wearing a bright orange sweatshirt that read, Halloween is my cardio. Tommy pointed at the canister. We found radioactive slime. Mr. Grimsby laughed. Excellent. Maybe it'll help my hair grow back. He removed his hat. He wasn't bald. Not even close. The campers stared at him. What? He said. I like that joke. No, you don't, Emma replied. Mr. Grimsby grinned. Then he looked at the canister. His smile faded. Well now, you know what it is? Jacob asked. Nope. He traversed down for a closer look. But if it starts growing teeth, I'm leaving. Tommy didn't laugh. Mr. Grimsby stood up. We should probably have Mr. Calder take a look. As if summoned by magic, the sound of a toolbox clanking came from behind the trees. Mr. Calder appeared. What now? Then he saw the canister. He froze. The color drained from his face. No. He dropped his toolbox. Where did you find that? Jacob pointed. It was right here. Mr. Calder hurried over and stared at the label. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Finally, he whispered, I thought this thing was gone. You know what it is? Emma asked. Mr. Calder nodded slowly. I've seen it before. Mr. Grimsby folded his arms. Mr. Calder, if this is another one of your ghost stories. It isn't. Mr. Calder's voice was sharp. The camp leader stopped talking. I saw this canister the night the projectionist disappeared. A cold breeze blew through the trees. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. The projectionist said it could do impossible things. What kind of impossible things? Jacob asked. Mr. Calder looked at the ooze. Then he swallowed. He said it could make imagination become reality. Nobody spoke. Tommy blinked. That's impossible. I know. Mr. Calder looked at the canister again. But after what happened that night, I'm not so sure. Then, drip. Another blob of ooze slid from the canister. This time it landed on something nearby. An old strip of film lying in the leaves. The green slime spread across the film. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the film began to move. The tiny pictures printed on it shimmered. The strip slowly curled upward as though it were breathing. Emma gasped. Jacob. The pictures on the film were changing. A wolf. A swamp creature. A full moon. The images moved on their own. Mr. Calder stepped backward. No, 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 no. Suddenly, the film snapped flat again. Everything became still. Tommy's mouth hung open. Did we all just see that? Nobody answered. Because they had. Mr. Calder grabbed the canister. We're taking this to my workshop. What is it? Mr. Grimsby asked. Mr. Calder looked toward the woods. The old maintenance man seemed suddenly older. Tired. Afraid. I don't know exactly what it is. He picked up his toolbox. But I know one thing. What? Jacob asked. Mr. Calder's eyes met his. With Halloween night almost here, this stuff couldn't have shown up at a worse time. A low rumble echoed through the trees. Not thunder. Something else. Then, from deep inside the forest, came a familiar sound. Whir, click, click. The old projector. Running once again. Mr. Calder gripped the canister tightly. Everybody back to camp. Right now. No one argued. As they hurried away, Jacob glanced back one last time. The strip of film was gone. Only a faint trail in the leaves remained, as though something had crawled away. Halloween was only one night away. Camp Michael's had never looked more beautiful. Orange lanterns hung from the trees. Pumpkins sat on cabin steps. Fake spiderwebs covered the dining hall. By tomorrow evening, the entire camp would be dressed in costumes for the annual Scares and Frights Festival. As Jacob, Emma, and Tommy walked through camp, Mr. Grimsby stood on the porch of the main lodge hanging a giant banner that read, Happy Halloween from Camp Michael's. It was hanging upside down. Mr. Grimsby, Emma called. The camp leader looked down. Yes, your banner's upside down. Mr. Grimsby stared at it. Huh. He scratched his head. I was wondering why it said, Leecham PMAC. The kids laughed. Even Mr. Calder chuckled as he walked by carrying his toolbox. That's the funniest thing you've ever said, Mr. Calder muttered. Mr. Grimsby smiled proudly. Thank you. I didn't say it was intentional. The smile disappeared. Jacob laughed. For a few moments, everything felt normal. Almost magical. Mr. Grimsby climbed down from the ladder. You know, he said, looking around the camp, every year is different. What do you mean? Tommy asked. The camp leader smiled. Every Halloween we get new campers, new counselors, new adventures. He pointed at the three of them. This year, it's you kids. Jacob grinned. You mean we're special? Mr. Grimsby shrugged. Or unlucky. Tommy frowned. That doesn't make me feel better. The camp leader laughed. When summer ends and Halloween comes around, Camp Michael's changes. He looked toward the woods. Some people come back. Then he smiled. And some people become legends. Mr. Calder suddenly stopped walking. A strange look crossed his face. Don't talk like that. Mr. Grimsby looked at him. I'm only kidding. Mr. Calder wasn't smiling. No, Harold, sometimes legends are real. The woods suddenly seemed colder. A gust of wind blew through the camp. Then, whir. Everyone froze. The sound came from the movie field. The old projector. Running again. Without a word, the four of them hurried toward the clearing. They arrived just as the projector's reels began spinning. Nobody had plugged it in. Nobody had touched it. Yet it was alive. The projector beam shot across the field and struck the giant movie screen. At first, nothing happened. Then an image appeared. A full moon, dark trees, a shadow moving through the woods. Jacob's heart pounded. The picture changed. A claw, a furry hand, sharp teeth, the wolf man. Then another image flickered onto the screen. Dark water, bubbles, a monstrous face rising from a swamp. The swamp creature. The pictures kept changing faster and faster. The projector began to shake. The reels spun wildly. Mr. Calder stepped backward. No. Green liquid suddenly dripped from inside the machine. Psychoactive ooze. More drops fell. The projector groaned. The screen rippled. Not like fabric. Like water. Tommy's eyes widened. Guys. A large claw slowly pushed through the screen. Emma gasped. That's impossible. Then another claw appeared. A growl echoed across the field. The screen stretched, tore, and something stepped out. Tall, covered in fur, glowing yellow eyes. The wolf man had left the movie. For one terrible second. Everyone stood frozen. The creature looked around the camp. Then it smiled. A deep, wet sound came from the screen behind it. A long, slimy hand reached through. The swamp creature was coming too. Mr. Grimsby removed his hat. I've got to admit, nobody looked at him. This is definitely not a raccoon. The wolf man roared. Everyone screamed. Mr. Grimsby smiled as he looked around the camp. You know, every year this place gets a whole new story. What do you mean? Tommy asked. The camp leader adjusted his hat. Different campers. Different counselors. Different adventures. Camp Michael's is always changing. He pointed toward the cabins. This year, it's you three. Jacob grinned. We're the stars. Mr. Grimsby chuckled. Maybe. Or maybe you're just this year's troublemakers. Even Mr. Calder smiled at that. Mr. Grimsby looked out toward the woods. Years from now, new kids will come here. They'll sit around campfires and tell stories about the campers that came before them. Tommy folded his arms. Can they tell stories about us being heroes? They can, Mr. Grimsby said. Then he added with a grin. Assuming you survive my cooking tonight. Everyone groaned. The scream seemed to echo forever. The creature had stepped out of the movie screen. Its yellow eyes glowed like lanterns in the darkness. Its fur was black as midnight. Its claws looked sharp enough to cut through tree bark. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The wolf man slowly turned its head and looked directly at the campers. Mr. Grimsby cleared his throat. I've changed my mind. Nobody looked at him. That is definitely not a raccoon. The wolf man let out a terrifying howl. Awowo. Panic erupted. Campers screamed and ran in every direction. Counselors shouted. The old projector rattled violently. Then, splash! A slimy hand burst through the movie screen. The swamp creature was coming through too. Mr. Calder's face went pale. Everybody back to the cabins. Jacob, Emma, and Tommy didn't wait for a second invitation. They sprinted after the others. Behind them came the sound of tearing fabric. The movie screen ripped open. The monsters had escaped. A few minutes later, everyone crowded inside the dining hall. The doors were locked. Chairs were pushed against the windows. Outside, the forest had gone strangely quiet. Mr. Grimsby paced back and forth. So, nobody answered. So, monsters are real. Still nobody answered. I feel like I should apologize to Mr. Calder. Mr. Calder folded his arms. I'd appreciate that. Mr. Grimsby sighed. I am deeply and sincerely sorry. Mr. Calder nodded. Accepted. Wonderful. Now what do we do? Before Mr. Calder could answer. Crash. Something slammed into the side of the building. Everyone jumped. Another crash. Then silence. Tommy looked terrified. I vote we all leave the camp. On foot, Emma asked. Good point. Another loud howl echoed through the woods. This time it sounded farther away. Jacob slowly looked toward the window. The wolf man wasn't attacking. It was hunting. Mr. Calder seemed to realize the same thing. Oh no. What? Jacob asked. The maintenance man looked toward the forest. It knows these woods now. The room became silent. It came from the movie, but now it's here. You mean? Emma whispered. Mr. Calder nodded. It's loose. Mr. Grimsby sat down heavily. Well, this certainly puts a wrinkle in the Halloween schedule. Jacob couldn't believe it. You're worried about the schedule? Mr. Grimsby shrugged. We've had bad weather before. Never monsters, but you learn to adapt. Even Emma laughed. Then Mr. Calder looked at the clock. Halloween night is almost here. Everyone became quiet again. Why does that matter? Jacob asked. Mr. Calder's expression darkened. Because whatever happened years ago happened on Halloween. He looked toward the woods. And if those creatures came out of the screen now, he didn't finish. He didn't have to. The monsters would still be here on Halloween night. Just then, bang, the front doors burst open. A counselor stumbled inside. It's in the woods. What is? Mr. Grimsby asked. The wolf man. I saw it by cabin 7. Everyone froze. The counselor was pale. It was standing on a rock, looking toward camp. Jacob's heart pounded. What was it doing? The counselor swallowed. It was howling. A cold breeze drifted through the open doorway. Then, faintly, came the sound again. Awo. Far away. Deep in the forest. The wolf man had claimed the woods. Later that night, Jacob couldn't sleep. Neither could Emma or Tommy. The three of them sat near the cabin window. Moonlight poured through the glass. Do you think it's still out there? Tommy whispered. Before anyone could answer, something moved between the trees. A shadow. Tall. Covered in fur. Yellow eyes. The wolf man. It stood at the edge of the forest. Watching the cabins. Watching the camp. Watching them. Jacob held his breath. The creature slowly lifted its head toward the moon. Then it howled once more. Awo. And disappeared into the darkness. Tommy swallowed. I don't think it likes us. No, Jacob said quietly. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. I think it's waiting. For what? Emma asked. Jacob looked toward the moon. Then toward the calendar hanging beside the cabin door. Only one square remained. October 31st. Halloween night. The next morning, Camp Michael's didn't feel like Camp Michael's anymore. The usual sounds of laughter and games had been replaced by whispers. Everyone had heard the howling. Some campers claimed they had seen glowing eyes in the woods. Others refused to leave their cabins. Even the counselors looked nervous. Halloween night was now only one day away. And somewhere in the forest, the wolf man was waiting. Jacob, Emma, and Tommy sat at the breakfast table. Nobody was hungry. Mr. Grimsby walked in carrying a tray of pancakes. Good morning, everyone, he announced. Silence. Tough crowd again. More silence. He set the tray down. I made smiley face pancakes. Tommy looked at one. It looks terrified. Mr. Grimsby sighed. That's because I am. Even Mr. Calder laughed at that. It was the first time anyone had heard the maintenance man laugh in days. Then, bang, the dining hall doors flew open. A young counselor burst inside. Mr. Grimsby. The camp leader jumped. What now? It's the lake. Everyone looked at him. What about the lake? Jacob asked. The counselor swallowed. The water is bubbling. A few minutes later, nearly everyone stood at the edge of Camp Michael's small lake. It wasn't really a lake, more of a large swampy pond. Tall reeds grew around its edges. The water was usually calm. Today, it wasn't. The surface bubbled. Blub, blub, blub. A foul smell drifted through the air. Tommy covered his nose. That can't be good. Mr. Calder stepped forward. His face had gone pale. No. What is it? Emma asked. Mr. Calder didn't answer. He simply stared at the water. Then the bubbling stopped. Everything became still. For one long moment. Nothing happened. Then, splash. A green hand burst from the water. Campers screamed. Another hand appeared. Then a head, covered in moss. Glowing yellow eyes. A mouth full of jagged teeth. Slowly, the swamp creature climbed from the pond. Water and weeds dripped from its body. It stood nearly 7 feet tall. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The creature looked around. Then it let out a horrible growl. Grrrah! Panic exploded. Campers ran. Counselors shouted. Mr. Grimsby dropped his hat. I officially hate this Halloween. The swamp creature took one heavy step onto the shore. Then another. It was free. Mr. Calder grabbed Jacob's shoulder. We have to get everyone back to camp. But what is that thing? Jacob asked. Mr. Calder stared at the monster. It came from the film, just like the wolf man. The creature roared again. Then it turned and lumbered toward the woods. Toward camp. Toward the cabins. Toward everyone. It's going to the camp, Emma shouted. No, Mr. Calder said quietly. It's going home. The others looked at him. What do you mean? Tommy asked. Mr. Calder looked toward the old movie shack in the distance. I think these creatures remember where they came from. A chill ran through Jacob. The monsters weren't lost. They knew exactly where they were. The swamp creature suddenly stopped. Its head turned. It looked directly toward the edge of the woods. A low howl echoed through the trees. Awowo, the wolf man. The swamp creature growled in reply. For a moment, the two monsters seemed to be calling to one another. Jacob's eyes widened. They know each other. Mr. Calder nodded slowly. They were in the same movie. The thought made everyone's stomach turn. The monsters weren't alone anymore. They had found each other. The swamp creature disappeared into the trees. Silence returned. Nobody moved. Finally, Mr. Grimsby picked up his hat. I have a question. Nobody answered. Is canceling Halloween an option? No, Tommy said quickly. Everyone looked at him. What? He asked. If monsters are taking over, I still want candy first. To everyone's surprise, they laughed. Only for a moment. But they laughed. Then Mr. Calder became serious. Halloween night is tomorrow. The smiles disappeared. If we're going to stop those creatures. He looked toward the dark forest. We have 1 day left to figure out how. A cold breeze swept across the lake. Halloween night was almost here. Only a few hours remained. The sky had turned gray, and a cold wind swept through Camp Michael's, rattling the orange lanterns hanging between the trees. No one was decorating anymore. No one was talking about costumes. No one was excited about candy. Every camper knew the truth. The monsters were real. And they were somewhere in the woods. Mr. Grimsby stood on the porch of the main lodge with a clipboard in his hand. "All right, everybody. Stay calm. Everything is under control." A tree branch snapped in the distance. Half the campers screamed. Mr. Grimsby looked toward the woods. "Okay, mostly under control." Mr. Calder sighed. "You keep saying that." "I have to," Mr. Grimsby replied. "I'm the camp leader." "You also said the wolf man was a raccoon." "I've had a rough week." Even Mr. Calder couldn't help but smile. Jacob, Emma, and Tommy helped move campers into the larger cabins so everyone could stay together. "Do you think the monsters will come back tonight?" Tommy asked. Jacob looked toward the forest. "I think they never left." As if answering him, a long howl echoed through the trees. "Awowo." Every person in camp froze. Then came another sound. A deep growl. The swamp creature. The two monsters were together again. Mr. Calder's face darkened. "They're getting closer." The sun slowly sank behind the mountains. Shadows stretched across the camp. The woods grew darker. The air became colder. Then, crash! A scream came from cabin 3. Everyone turned. Another scream. Then another. Jacob saw something moving between the cabins. A tall shadow, covered in fur. Yellow eyes. "The wolf man," he shouted. Panic exploded. Campers ran in every direction. Doors slammed. Counselors shouted. Mr. Grimsby blew a whistle. Nobody listened. Then, splash! Something huge emerged from behind cabin 5. The swamp creature, covered in mud and dripping water. The monster let out a terrible roar. The panic became chaos. Inside, Mr. Calder shouted, "Everybody inside." Jacob grabbed Tommy's arm. Emma helped 2 younger campers toward the dining hall. The wolf man leaped onto a picnic table. Its claws dug into the wood. Then it howled. "Awowo." The swamp creature smashed a pumpkin display. Orange pieces flew everywhere. Mr. Grimsby looked heartbroken. "I carved that one." "Harold," Mr. Calder shouted. "Sorry, wrong priority." The monsters moved through the camp. Not attacking. Searching. They sniffed the air, looked at the cabins, peered toward the old woods. Almost as if they were trying to remember something. Then, both creatures suddenly stopped. They turned their heads. Toward the edge of camp. Toward the dark trees. Toward the old movie shack. Jacob's eyes widened. "They're going there." Mr. Calder nodded slowly. "They know something we don't." Without another sound, both monsters disappeared into the woods. Silence fell over Camp Michaels. Only heavy breathing remained. Tommy finally spoke. Did we survive?" "For now," Emma said. Mr. Grimsby adjusted his hat. "Well," everyone looked at him. "I officially declare this the worst pre-Halloween celebration in camp history." A few nervous laughs escaped. Then Mr. Calder became serious. "Halloween night begins in a few hours." The laughter stopped. "If we're going to stop those things." He looked toward the dark forest. "The answers are in that old projection booth." Jacob looked toward the trees. The same trees where the monsters had vanished. The same trees hiding the movie shack. He swallowed. "We're going after them?" Mr. Calder picked up his toolbox. Tonight, a cold wind swept through the camp. In the distance, a projector began to run. Whir, click, click. Jacob's heart pounded. Because somehow, the monsters had led them exactly where they needed to go. To the place where the nightmare had begun. The forest seemed darker than ever. Jacob, Emma, Tommy, Mr. Grimsby and Mr. Calder stood at the edge of the trees, staring into the darkness. Somewhere beyond the pines sat the old movie shack. Somewhere nearby were the wolf man and the swamp creature. A cold breeze blew through camp. Mr. Calder tightened his grip on his toolbox. "Stay close." Tommy swallowed. "Can I stay here instead?" "No. Thought I'd ask." Mr. Grimsby adjusted his hat. "I'd like it noted that leading children into monster-filled woods is not covered in the camp handbook." Mr. Calder started walking. "Neither are living movie monsters." "Fair point." The group made their way through the forest. Branches snapped under their feet. Leaves rustled overhead. Then, whir, click, click. The projector. The sound echoed through the trees. Jacob's heart pounded. They were getting closer. Then, at last, they saw it. The movie shack. Moonlight shined down upon the old building. The boards covering the windows had fallen away. The front door hung crookedly on its hinges. And for the first time in years, light spilled from inside. Nobody said a word. Tommy finally whispered, "That's not creepy at all." Mr. Calder slowly pushed open the door. Creak. The smell of dust and old film filled the room. Inside, everything had been frozen in time. Ancient movie posters covered the walls. Film reels were stacked from floor to ceiling. A broken popcorn machine sat in one corner. And at the back of the room was a staircase leading downward. Jacob blinked. "There's a basement?" Mr. Calder nodded. "Most people don't know about it." Mr. Grimsby looked surprised. "I've been camp leader for 12 years. Mr. Calder shrugged. "You don't notice much." "I notice plenty. You once hung the camp flag upside down for 3 days. Mr. Grimsby thought about it. "That explains a few things." Then, whir, click, click. The sound came again. This time, from below. Everyone looked at the staircase. The projector was running. In the basement. Mr. Calder's face turned pale. "No." "What?" Jacob whispered. "There wasn't supposed to be power down there." Slowly, they descended the stairs. One step, then another. The projector grew louder. The beam of light flickered Trevor the doorway below. Then they reached the bottom. Jacob's mouth fell open. It wasn't a basement. It was an old projection booth. A secret theater hidden Trevoreth Camp Michaels. Dust-covered chairs faced a large white screen. Movie posters lined the walls. Film canisters were stacked everywhere. And in the center of the room, an old projector was running by itself. Its reels spun slowly. Its beam illuminated the screen. Nobody had touched it. Nobody was near it. The machine was alive. Then Emma noticed something. Look. On a table beside the projector sat a journal. Its cover was cracked with age. The words on the front read, "Projectionist's Logbook." Mr. Calder slowly picked it up. His hands trembled. "I've never seen this before." Jacob opened the first page. Inside was neat handwriting. The journal belonged to the missing projectionist. The one who had disappeared all those years ago. Everyone gathered around. Jacob turned to the final entry. The ink looked hurried, as if it had been written in fear. He read aloud, October 31st. "The ooze works. It can make the movies real. But I made a terrible mistake. The creatures don't want to return to the screen. If anyone finds this, do not let them survive until Halloween night. And if they escape, find the D10. Everyone looked at each other. D10? Emma asked. Mr. Calder's eyes widened. No. What is it? Jacob asked. The maintenance man slowly looked around the room, then pointed. At the back of the projection booth, a dusty metal cabinet. The words painted across its door had nearly faded away, but they were still readable. Film dissolvent storage. The room fell silent. Tommy swallowed. I have a feeling that's important. Before anyone could answer, a low growl echoed from outside the shack. Then another. And another. The monsters had found them. Mr. Grimsby looked toward the door. Please tell me there are no monsters in this basement. A howl answered him. Oh. Mr. Grimsby sighed. I knew the answer before I asked. The old projector suddenly began spinning faster. The beam brightened. The screen flickered. And outside, heavy footsteps approached the shack. The wolf man and the swamp creature were coming. And hidden inside the forgotten projection booth was the only thing that could stop them. The growl came again. Closer. Much closer. The walls of the old movie shack creaked. Something heavy was outside. Then, thump. A claw struck the front door. Tommy jumped. I'd like to go home now. Me too, Mr. Grimsby said. Mr. Calder ignored them. He hurried toward the dusty cabinet. Paint peeled from its metal doors. Across the front, barely visible Trevoreth years of dust were the words. Film dissolvent storage. D10. Jacob's heart pounded. This is it. Mr. Calder grabbed the handles. They wouldn't budge. The cabinet was locked. Another thump shook the building. Thud. The wolf man was trying to get in. The swamp creature growled outside. The old shack trembled. We don't have much time, Emma shouted. Mr. Calder searched his toolbox. There's always a way to open a lock. Mr. Grimsby looked hopeful. You carry lockpicks? No. Mr. Calder pulled out a hammer. I carry this. Bang. The hammer struck the lock. Nothing. Bang. Again. The lock trevort. Outside. Roar. The swamp creature slammed into the wall. Dust rained from the ceiling. Tommy covered his head. Maybe we should have stayed in the cabins. Bang. The lock finally snapped. The cabinet doors creaked open. Everyone stared inside. 3 dusty metal canisters sat on the shelf. Each was marked. Film dissolvent. D10. Mr. Calder carefully picked one up. It looked almost identical to the Psychoactive Ooze canister. What is it? Jacob asked. The maintenance man wiped the dust away. Then he noticed something. There was another paper inside the cabinet. A folded note. The same handwriting as the projectionist's journal. Mr. Calder opened it. His eyes widened. What does it say? Emma asked. He began to read. If you are reading this, then the creatures escaped. The psychoactive ooze gave life to anything projected upon the screen. But all things created by film have one weakness. Film dissolvent D10. It breaks down the living film and returns the creatures to nothing. Be warned. The longer the creatures remain alive, the stronger they become. They must be destroyed before the end of Halloween night. The room became silent. Tommy swallowed. Before the end of Halloween night? Mr. Calder nodded. The date in the journal suddenly made sense. The monsters had escaped once before. The projectionist had tried to stop them. And failed. Jacob looked at the canister. So this can destroy them? Mr. Calder nodded slowly. It's the only thing that can. Then Jacob noticed something else. At the bottom of the cabinet was an old photograph. It showed the projectionist standing outside the movie shack. Beside him was a young Mr. Calder. Everyone looked at him. Mr. Grimsby blinked. You knew him? Mr. Calder sighed. Yes, you never said that. You never asked. Another loud crash shook the shack. The front door splintered. Tommy screamed. Mr. Calder looked at the photograph. His face had become very sad. He was my friend. Nobody said anything. He discovered the ooze by accident. Thought it would change movies forever. Mr. Calder looked at the old projector. He didn't mean to create monsters. What happened to him? Jacob asked softly. Mr. Calder swallowed. He stayed behind. Another crash. The door began to break apart. He used the D10 to destroy the creatures the first time. Jacob's eyes widened. The first time? Mr. Calder nodded. But there wasn't enough. The room fell silent. He managed to stop most of them. Mr. Calder looked toward the projector. But not before he disappeared. You think the monsters got him? Emma asked. Mr. Calder shook his head. I don't know. Then he smiled sadly. But he did save the camp. Suddenly. Crack! The front door exploded inward. A terrifying howl filled the shack. The wolf man had entered. The swamp creature's slimy hand reached through the opening. Mr. Grimsby nearly dropped his hat. Oh, good. The monsters found us. Nobody laughed. Mr. Calder grabbed the D10 canisters. Jacob picked up another. So, what do we do? The maintenance man looked at everyone. Then toward the stairs. Then toward the monsters. Finally, he smiled. We do what my friend couldn't. Outside, thunder rolled. The moon rose above Camp Michael's. Halloween night had finally arrived. And now, they had the one thing capable of ending the nightmare. Film Dissolvent D10. Halloween night had arrived. The full moon hung high above Camp Michael's. Orange lanterns swayed in the wind. Jack-o'-lanterns flickered on cabin porches. It should have been the happiest night of the year. Instead, Camp Michael's had become a battlefield. The wolf man stood in the doorway of the movie shack, its glowing eyes fixed on the group. Beside it, the swamp creature squeezed through the broken entrance, slime dripping onto the floor. The monsters had them trapped. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Mr. Grimsby whispered, I officially cancel monster movie night. The wolf man growled. Too late for that, he asked. The creature roared. Definitely too late. Mr. Calder grabbed the D10 canisters. Run. Everyone bolted up the stairs. The monsters charged after them. The old shack shook with every step. They burst outside. Moonlight flooded the clearing. The wolf man leaped through the doorway. The swamp creature followed. Jacob looked around. There was nowhere to hide. Then he saw it. The giant outdoor movie screen. The old projector. Still running. Its beam shining across the field. The monsters had come full circle. Back to where they had been born. The wolf man howled. Awowo. The sound echoed across Camp Michael's. Cabin doors opened. Campers peeked outside. Counselors stepped onto porches. Everyone saw it. The monsters. The legends. The nightmare. Mr. Grimsby pointed toward the cabins. Everybody stay back. No one argued. The swamp creature roared and charged. Jacob ducked. The creature smashed into a picnic table, sending splinters everywhere. Tommy nearly dropped his canister. I don't think we're winning. We haven't started yet, Emma shouted. The wolf man lunged. Mr. Calder swung his toolbox. Clang. The creature stumbled backward. Mr. Grimsby blinked. You hit a werewolf with a toolbox. Mr. Calder shrugged. It worked. The projector suddenly whirred louder. The screen flickered. The old film still played. Images of dark forests and monsters danced across it. Jacob suddenly remembered the journal. The creatures don't want to return to the screen. An idea struck him. Mr. Calder. What? What if we get them back in front of the projector? Mr. Calder's eyes widened. Of course. The film. Emma smiled. If they're made from the movie, they may still be connected to it. Mr. Calder finished. The wolf man charged again. Jacob ran toward the movie screen. Hey, Furball. The creature stopped. Jacob waved his arms. Come and get me. Jacob, Emma yelled. The wolfman roared and gave chase. The plan was working. Meanwhile, Tommy and Mr. Grimsby led the swamp creature toward the projector. The camp leader looked terrified. I am far too old for this. Within moments, both monsters stood in front of the giant screen. The projector's beam shined directly on them. The creatures suddenly hesitated. They looked back at the screen, then at one another. Almost afraid. Mr. Calder raised the D10 canister. This is it. The wolf man roared. The swamp creature charged. Mr. Calder looked at everyone. Ready? Jacob grinned. Emma nodded. Tommy swallowed. No. Good enough. Together, they raised the canisters. The monsters came closer. 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 Then, now, streams of film dissolvent blasted through the air. The liquid struck both creatures. The wolf man howled. The swamp creature screamed. Smoke rose from their bodies. Black film strips began peeling from their skin. The creatures stumbled backward toward the screen. The projector roared. The movie flickered wildly. The monsters were dissolving. But they weren't gone yet. The final battle had begun. The monsters screamed. Smoke poured from their bodies. The film dissolvent was working, but not fast enough. The wolf man staggered backward, then suddenly charged. Its glowing eyes burned with fury. Jacob barely jumped out of the way. The creature's claws ripped through a wooden trevorch. Crash! The swamp creature roared and swung one massive arm. The projector toppled onto its side. The beam of light danced wildly across the field. Oh no, Mr. Calder whispered. The projector. If it stopped, would the monsters stay? The wolf man howled at the moon. The sound seemed to shake the entire camp. Then something terrifying happened. The dissolving stopped. The black film strips hanging from its body began pulling back into place. It was healing. Emma's eyes widened. They're getting stronger. Mr. Calder looked at the sky. The clock on the lodge tower began striking. Dong, dong, dong. Midnight was getting close. The words from the journal echoed in his mind. They must be destroyed before the end of Halloween night. Everyone, Mr. Calder shouted. We have to finish this now. The swamp creature lunged. Mr. Grimsby ducked. The creature crashed into the candy table. Chocolate and caramel flew everywhere. The camp leader looked horrified. My Halloween candy. The swamp creature stepped on a bowl of candy corn. Mr. Grimsby gasped. Now it's personal. Even in the middle of the chaos, Jacob laughed. Then the wolf man pounced. Mr. Calder raised his toolbox. Clang! The toolbox flew into the woods. So much for that, Mr. Calder muttered. The creature stood over him. Its claws slowly lifted. Mr. Calder closed his eyes. Then, thwack! A pumpkin smashed into the wolf man's head. Everyone looked. Tommy stood there, breathing hard. Another pumpkin in his hands. Nobody eats Mister. He threw the second pumpkin. Splat! The wolf man stumbled. Mr. Grimsby blinked. I always knew decorative gourds would save us one day. Jacob looked at the projector. An idea suddenly struck him. Emma. What? The screen. She looked toward the giant movie screen. Then she understood. The creatures came from the film. Maybe they could be sent back. Mr. Calder, she shouted. We need the projector. Mr. Calder's eyes widened. Of course. Together, they rushed toward the fallen machine. The swamp creature saw them. It roared and charged. Jacob grabbed the projector. It was heavier than he expected. Little help. Mr. Grimsby picked up one side. You know, this isn't how I planned to spend Halloween night. Together they lifted the machine. The beam shined once again, straight onto the giant movie screen. The screen flickered. A dark forest appeared. The movie had started again. The wolf man turned. The swamp creature turned. Both monsters stared at the screen. Their eyes changed. For the first time, they looked afraid. Mr. Calder lifted the final canister of D10. It was almost empty. The last of it. The last splash of Halloween, he whispered. Jacob smiled. Let's make it count. The monsters charged. Everyone stood their ground. Jacob, Emma, Tommy, Mr. Calder, Mr. Grimsby, this year's campers, this year's camp leader, this year's maintenance man. The story of Camp Michaels belonged to them now. The monsters came closer. The moon shined overhead. The projector roared. And together, they sprayed the final blast of film dissolvent. A shining wave of D10 flew through the air. Splash! The wolf man screamed. The swamp creature roared. Their bodies began unraveling. Not flesh, not fur. Film. Thousands upon thousands of strips of old movie film peeled away from them. The wind caught the strips. The projector's beam pulled them toward the screen. The monsters fought. They clawed at the ground. They reached for the campers. But it was too late. The film kept unraveling. Their bodies became shadows. Then smoke. Then flickering images. Finally, the wolf man looked up at the moon one last time. The swamp creature let out one final growl. And both monsters were pulled into the movie screen. The projector flashed. The screen went white. Then, snap. The film reel ended. Silence. The projector stopped. The moon shone brightly over Camp Michaels. The monsters were gone. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Tommy broke the silence. Did we win? Mr. Calder slowly smiled. We won. The camp erupted into cheers. Campers poured from the cabins. Counselors hugged one another. Mr. Grimsby picked up a piece of candy from the ground. He looked around the camp. At the pumpkins. At the lanterns. At the smiling faces. And then he laughed. Well, everyone looked at him. I guess Monster Movie Night was a success after all. Everyone groaned. Even Mr. Calder laughed. As midnight arrived, the campers gathered around the campfire. Halloween wasn't ruined after all. It had become the greatest Halloween story Camp Michaels had ever known. One day, new campers would come. New counselors. New adventures. And around this very fire, someone would tell the legend of the year when movie monsters came to life. The year of Jacob, Emma, Tommy, Mr. Grimsby, and Mr. Calder. The year they saved Camp Michaels. And above them, the full moon shined over the peaceful camp once more. Or so they thought. Far away, inside the abandoned movie shack, something dripped onto the floor. A tiny drop. Green. Glowing. The psychoactive ooze. It slowly slid toward the old projector. Then, whir, click, click. A reel began to turn. The end.